This is following on from the early video I did on scale before, and it just illustrates why you need to have a scale and why you need to draw things on accordingly. So I have put a grid on here. It makes life a little easier, and each square is around about 2 centimeters, and that's going to represent a meter on the ground outside. If the grid wasn't there, as long as when you draw things on, okay, you're representing the same scale, so it can be a blank sheet of paper, but when this Anderson shelter is drawn on, okay, it should be 8 centimeters on that bit of paper, okay, and that will correspond to the correct amount of meters on the floor. All right. Same with the plants. Now, it's very important. You can't just put, oh, I'm going to have like a tree here. All right. The problem with that is I'm looking at that scale now, and straight away I'm thinking, well, that tree's only like what, half a meter spread. That's not really what you want to do. So you got to try and keep faithful to what you're trying to do. So, for example, if it's a Victoria plum, well, I'm expecting a Victoria plum to have at least a 3 meter spread if it's on a short graft. Okay. So if my tree is planted there, okay, so 3 meters we're looking at is 3 of them squares. So it should, your tree should then cover 3 of the squares, because then you can see, as soon as if you start putting plants on there and you're not using a scale, you'll put too many plants in, or you'll put the wrong ones in, because you won't realize how big they're going to be eventually. And then I'd put a number 1 on that, and that corresponds to my plant list that says Victoria plum. And on that plant list, I'll have the height and the spread, so I know exactly where I am with it. Give you another example. Okay, so I've put lavender. You can imagine if I used the same sort of thing here, I'll just put like a chunk of lavender there. All right, that doesn't really tell you how much space you got left on there. All right, so again, same thing. What you really want to do is, it's all about discipline, really. Your lavender, again, if it's a big lavender, 1 meter spread. I'm not bothered about the height. I just want to see the spread on there because I need to know what room I've got. And because one of them, that's 1 meter there, then all I've got to do is just make sure that, so there's number 2, like that. Okay. So your circles and your plants are going to get quite big. All right. Now, if, for example, you're going to do, well, Michael, I'm going to have like a plot of bulbs. So how do I put an individual bulb on there? Not easy, and it's no point. So what I would do is look at how big a border, how big a thing do you want to put on your bulbs? Okay, so if I wanted to put a border of bulbs down the back of the side of the garden, that square is representing a meter wide. So all I would do is I go, well, I want it about 3 meters long. Okay, and then you just give you a rough idea. You don't want to put individual tulips on because it'll do your head in, but just mark on, so that's bulbs, right? If it's larger plants, then that's how you do it. If you've got a smaller perennial, all right. So again, you look at the circle. Okay, then this is my flower border down here. So some of the perennials aren't going to be like a meter wide. They're only going to eventually get about 30-40 centimeters tops wide. But I want a decent chunk. So what I would do then is I would allocate that meter as a circle, and I'll put 3 little X's in there. 1, 2, 3, and that's gonna make my clump of plants there and a reasonable, and they've got a bit of space between them so they can grow together. So eventually, you're not going to see the 3 plants; they'll grow together as a group. But that shows the position of where the plant is going to go, and that's why I put like little X marks a spot. Right, so you can see where they all are, and everything, as I said, will have a number. So let's say if that was number 3, okay, and that's going to be that could be a perennial. That could be, say, geranium. There's a nice one called Johnson's Blue, something like that. Okay, so number 3 is the geranium. I can see what that is, and I can see how wide it's going to grow. Number 2 is my lavender. I can see where it is, and I can see how wide that's going to be. Okay, and I use the book as a guide, right? Different planting positions and different soils are going to dictate it a little bit, but usually the height and the spread it's an approximate guess. Okay, so that's how I'd mark it. I have got a veg plot on here, to be honest. Now, again, you wouldn't mark the individual veg. You could just mark it where you're going to have the rows. That's what I'm going to have, the rows of veg right now. Okay. And I can tell that that's going to be about a metre apart. So I can get in between them. I've got plenty of access. A bit wide, but it would work. You get the idea. Okay. The path itself, again, was drawn to the width of the square, which is 1 metre, which is a standard kind of width of a path, really, width of a couple of slabs. So this is why, okay, it's so important. So on a bigger scale, I've got, if you imagine that that's one of them squares there, if your shrub is going to be a metre wide, okay, it's going to fill at least one of the squares. If it's only going to be like half a metre wide, it's only going to be half a square. All right, it's better to represent it there. If you just start putting, oh well, I'm going to put something there, and I'm going to put just little markers and little stuff like that, and that's going to be a lavender, so that's a LA, right? That's going to be a lupin, that's a LU. If you're not careful, you're going to start. It's going to get real confusing. Or trying to put the name in, and before you know it, your design is going to look well tatty, and you can't see what the heck's going on. So keep it simple. Okay, so all you do, as I said, mark the width of the plant against your scale so you can see faithfully what it's going to look like. Put a mark where the planting's going to be, give it a number, and that number goes on a plant list. Okay? If you keep it as simple as that, it's easy to follow. All right? You don't have to make it fancy. Now, if you've got a larger garden, like I said, you could change the scale so that, or you can up it and play about with it. Generally speaking, try and get it on a single sheet of paper. You don't want it looking like the Daily Telegraph and it's all over the place. So you want to keep it. This is my like a working sketch. Okay, so bear that in mind when you're marking stuff on a plan. Okay, try always put your scale on. Always keep to that scale, and anything you mark on is governed by that, so that you make sure that it's all measured out correctly, so you can see how it all fits together. Because without that scale, you're lost. That's like trying to find your way without a compass. Okay, you know roughly where you're going, but you'll get lost. That scale helps you keep the direction. It helps you maintain the relationship between all the objects together in the garden, so they don't all clash or you don't make any mistakes. Okay, so think about that when you're doing it. All right.